choice. The vast majority of our students in our system will be perfectly happy to continue going to their district-run local public school, and they will thrive, and that's wonderful. But this isn't about percentages. You know, when you hear that 70% of our kids are reading at grade level, well, that's great. But what about the other 30%, and why aren't they reading at grade level, and what do we have to do to get at that? I just refuse to accept that this is just the way things have to be. I've seen charter schools using phonics and other things in grade school and getting 99% reading levels at grade level. So I know it can be done. I visited charter schools all over this country, including a KIPP Academy in the reconstructed New Orleans area, nearly 100% African American school. Those kids are all achieving at grade level, and KIPP has a long history going back in a number of urban centers. Their kids, they had 90% of their kids go on to college. And they pulled these kids out of a school system that nature simply eliminated. Think what you will about whether there's a biblical cause or consequence in that, but the district was wiped away, and this reconstructed school district, which is basically all charter, now has a KIPP and many others. Those kids were in a school that for decades had a 10% college attendance rate, 10%. And I guarantee you the kids going through that KIPP Academy, 90% of them will go on to college. Tell me that doesn't matter to those kids, to those families, to this country, and to our economy, to have people who we spend, you know, if we're spending $10,000 per kid and they're in our system for 12 or 13 years, if you count K, it's $120,000, $130,000 we're spending on each and every one of these children. That anybody would come out without a basic high school diploma, where's the money back guarantee? It's just ridiculous. But anyway, you're getting into my passionate phase here. So I was very, very pleased that we were able to move those things. It was touch and go for a long time in that process, but no one will ever care about that in the long run. What will matter is that those choices are available to kids, and so I needed 4 days consecutively of sleeping in to re-energize myself, but I'm very proud of that work and happy to come back in February and just keep fighting for more. We'd like to get funding equity for charter schools. There's no reason those districts and authorizers ought to be able to skim up to 20% off of their budget. It's already very difficult to run a charter school on the budget they have. You know, we spend about $10,000 in all funds in our public education system, and that local property tax, federal funds. Charter schools can only get access to that per student money from the state, which is about a little over $6,000. And then when the district keeps 5 to 20% of that, you're operating your charter school on $4,500 per student. Now, some of these charter schools still do an outstanding job on what is essentially less than half of what we're spending in district-run schools. But many of them struggle, and they struggle to retain good quality people because they just cannot pay salaries at the same level as schools that are getting $10,000 in funding. So we need to get at that piece, and we need, you know, all the research on this that is credible, and there's a lot of phony research out there and everything, including the global warming community. But the really good quality research on education has proven over time that the most, and of course, you know, that you even have to say this is silly, but the most important ingredient in our public education system is the teacher. If you have a high-performing teacher, it makes all the difference. A low-performing teacher will get about a half a year's growth out of a student. A high-performing teacher will get 1.5 years growth out of an average student. So two twins put into a public education system in which one gets, in their first and second grade, teachers, low-performing teachers, and their twin in first and second grade gets 2 high-performing teachers, one twin will be 2 years academically ahead of the other. That's the difference that it makes. And we absolutely do nothing within our system to identify who the low performers are and to counsel them out of the profession and to reward and retain the high performers. I don't care whether you call it merit pay or a purple duck. You need to find a way to do what we do in just about every aspect of our society, and that is reward the high performers. It matters probably more than in the widget factory. These children do not get their second grade twice. So we're going to have a bill probably in February. I don't know whether we'll get it passed in February, but we're not going anywhere until we do, to begin to end tenure in our public education system, stop the paying of teachers just based on how many years they have been in school and how much continuing education they have achieved, and instead start tracking year-over-year growth. You know, teachers union will complain it's not fair to the teacher in Woodburn to be compared to the teacher in Lake Oswego. That's true. You don't base these things on state tests. You base them on their year-over-year growth. Frankly, the teacher in Woodburn probably, if you have a low-performing student, you have a lot more upside on the growth to get. But you know, you can compare a teacher in Woodburn to a teacher in Lake Oswego if you're comparing year-over-year growth in academic gains. That's what really matters. So I can stop there. I can see there's already interest in going into the Q&A. So what time we have left, which looks like about 30 minutes, I'll just do fielder's choice for you.
Kings Valley Charter School
I've been there.
Will this year have their first graduating class from the high school, I believe. Because
wonderful.
They've added, as their students, you know, have progressed, they've just added that on. And I go out there and do dictionaries for fourth graders, and so it's really fun to be out there. And I think Philomath does pretty well in the funding part for Kings Valley.
Well, I guarantee you they're not getting all $6,000.
No, I know they're not.
Well, that's good news. I'm happy to hear. I think it's been 2 years since I was out at Kings Valley, but looked like a high-performing, high-functioning school with a lot of happy adults and children. That's wonderful. Yes, sir.
How are you going to assess the teacher's performance? Then.
Well, I mean, the logical way to do it is to use some kind of a nationally normed test that the children take at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. And then you can track each student's academic growth.
Hmm.
Private schools do this all the time, by the way. It's not rocket science. Did you have a follow-up question?
Oh well, yes. Then you're going to have teachers essentially teaching to the test.
Well, if the test is testing their math, reading, and writing skills, I would hope they would. I mean, if I told you in 3 months we're going to give you a test on the Constitution, I would hope you would spend those 3 months studying the Constitution. So it's not so much teaching to the test that is the problem. That's kind of a little phrase that floats out there a lot as a criticism. I mean, you know, if you're going to test a kid on whether or not they know their multiplication tables, I would hope that the teachers are teaching multiplication tables. What matters is how you administer the test and how much time is involved in that. The state has constructed a bunch of its own internal tests. These OAKS tests that we do in the state of Oregon have been crafted here. And, you know, before they dropped it after many years of confusion, the math problem-solving test was basically a test of writing and verbal skills, because you had to do your answer and then explain your answer and show another way to get to it. So, I mean, it wasn't really a math test. And then, of course, a whole bunch of people have to score those things and read them. So you can create very confusing, time-consuming tests that involve a lot of time in which the people giving the tests have to, what the teachers end up having to do, because the test is not very straightforward, is spend a lot of time teaching the children to take the test. And that's really where you get into a problem. When you hear teachers say, I'm spending a lot of time teaching to the test, it's not the material so much that they're complaining about. It's the fact that the test is unique in a way that requires them to spend a lot of time going over the test itself with the children about how to answer questions and, you know, how to, you know, get the best score and that kind of thing. And you don't really need to do that. I mean, you can use off-the-shelf nationally normed tests that, you know, are basically Scantron, right? And they can be scored very, very quickly. You don't really need to spend very much time teaching children how to take that test. But we're in this constant battle within the education system from a lot of people who are just convinced. I mean, look, you know, 50 years ago we battled communism and they thought they were right. It's amazing what people will convince themselves is true. And one of the things we battle in the education system is this belief that something about teaching is magical and cannot be quantified. You know, you just cannot really figure out who the good teachers are. There's just no good way to judge that. And our tests, you know, these nationally normed tests that those of us who are old enough remember taking that involve basically pencil and bubbles, right? Those are unfair because they don't really test all the knowledge a child really knows, and there's so much they know that doesn't really come out on the test, and they might just not be good at taking those tests. And that constant argument is simply a way of not holding teachers accountable and never figuring out whether our kids are learning anything.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Do we know at any given time where the Oregon student stands as far as their ability against the other states in the
Sure,
region?
because there's an organization called the National Board. They actually do the SAT tests too for college entrance. They do something called the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, and they do that all around the country, and then they show the scores by state.
On the latest one, where do they fall? You know that?
We're kind of in the middle of the pack.
On the lower end.
In the lower end or
Yes.
middle one?
I just saw it.
The numbers.
Now, what
The numbers aren't that
does everybody
far
just accept
apart.
this and say, okay, that's fine? Or do we find out what the upper end is teaching that we're not? Or how the upper end is teaching that we're
you know,
not?
look, I've been